Hey, it's St. Paul Police. Did you hear what happened?
This is Shane Anderson. Shane seems to be annoyed that police officers are knocking on his door, but his demeanor will quickly change from annoyed to concerned when they bring up his girlfriend, 32-year-old Alex Pennig.
She okay? Passed away.
Alex Pennig? You're kidding me. God.
Just hours before this interaction, at exactly 2:53 a.m., the St. Paul Police Department received an emotional 911 call. The caller reported that Alex had been shot in the head and was now bleeding out on her bathroom floor. Police dispatch notified all units of the shooting. Several officers, firefighters, and EMTs rushed to 260 5th Street East. They arrived within minutes, but had to wait at the entrance of the building until somebody could unlock the door. The caller, 44-year-old Matthew Ecker, let them inside. He was still on the phone with 911. As they took the elevator to the second floor, Matthew started having a panic attack. Prepared for the worst, law enforcement made their way down the hall. They then entered the apartment, and on their right side, a bathroom door was open. Alex was inside, lying on her back in a pool of blood. She had a gunshot wound to her left temple, and beside her, they found a handgun. One of the first responders picked up the gun and placed it on the bathroom counter. They then checked for any signs of life, but it was clear that Alex was dead.
It's fine because you can see her. That's okay. You gotta keep breathing. You gotta keep breathing.
Oh, God.
I know it's shocked. I know it's hard.
Naturally, the officers had plenty of questions for Matthew, but they started off with some basic information.
Is this your apartment or hers?
It's hers.
Her apartment?
Yes.
First name Matt, is it Matthew?
Yeah.
And what's your last name? What's her name?
Alexandra.
Were you guys arguing or something?
No.
Matthew was struggling to explain exactly what happened, so the officers asked him to start at the beginning of the day when he and Alex first spoke. He told them that he lives 3 hours away in Fergus Falls, where he works as a nurse practitioner for Lake Region Healthcare. Around 11 a.m., while he was driving to his shift, Alex called his cell phone.
She called me.
Alex told Matthew that she had gotten into a heated argument with her boyfriend, Shane Anderson, who became extremely aggressive. She sounded scared and desperate for Matthew's support, so he immediately called into work before heading to her apartment.
So I came here. Help her feel safe.
He brought a registered firearm in his backpack in case Shane showed back up and became violent.
Because I was worried that her boyfriend would come.
Matthew arrived at Alex's apartment at around 2 p.m., 3 hours after she called him. After a stressful day, the two decided to let loose for the night. They headed downtown and visited a few local bars. While at a local hotspot called Camp Bar and Cabaret, they ran into Shane, who was extremely confrontational.
He came to her, they were arguing, and I came across and I stood in between them and then he punched me.
After Shane was kicked out of the bar for punching Matthew, Matthew and Alex hung around for a few more drinks.
And then her and I sat there and talked with other people for another 45 minutes. We came back here and I thought everything was fine.
But within 5 minutes of returning to Alex's apartment, she suddenly became hysterical.
And then she just grabbed the gun.
The next thing he remembers is breaking through the bathroom door and standing over her dead body. He tried to plug the wound and apply pressure to stop the bleeding.
I tried to do what I could.
Okay.
And then I washed my hands. And
Then you wash your hands?
Correct. That's why I don't have anything.
And then you called the police?
According to Matthew, he called the police 4 minutes after the gun went off, so Alex's death was at approximately 2:49 a.m. Upon learning that Matthew had washed his bloody hands in the sink, the officers double-checked the sink for evidence. But not only was there no blood, the sink was completely dry. By this point, lead detectives Abby DeSanto and Jennifer O'Donnell had arrived. After being caught up to speed, they began inspecting the scene. Alcohol and prescription medications were scattered all over her apartment. Across from the bathroom was a closet door with 2 holes in it. The detectives wondered if Shane had punched this door during the argument with Alex earlier that day. They asked the neighbors if they had ever heard any fighting coming from Alex's apartment, but there wasn't anything notable to report. The detectives wondered if they could get any insight from Alex's phone, but without her passcode, they were unable to access it for the time being. So, they spoke directly to Alex's family and friends. It turns out that Alex had a history of abusing prescription medication, a habit that started in college. She eventually turned her life around, and in 2019, she graduated from a practical nursing program. She gave an inspiring speech at her graduation.
Thank you to my family for never once giving up on me when many times I'm sure you'd wanted to.
A year later, in 2020, she was working part-time at a walk-in clinic, the same clinic that Matthew worked at. The detectives learned that even though Matthew was married with 4 kids, he immediately hit it off with Alex, so he began cheating on his wife with her. Although Matthew was happy with this setup, Alex called things off shortly after the affair began. Then, in the summer of 2022, Alex reverted back to her old ways, and she began drinking heavily every day. She was fired from the walk-in clinic and struggled to hold down any new jobs. That's where Matthew saw an opening. He stepped in to financially support her, paying for her rent, groceries, and medication until she got back on her feet. Despite Casanova Matthew saving the day, Alex would come to meet a sweet guy named Shane before the summer was over. They quickly fell for each other, making things official in October of that same year. But according to Matthew's story, Shane became a violent and abusive boyfriend, punching things during arguments and assaulting Alex's guy friends out of jealousy. With all of this information, detectives now had 2 goals: rule out Matthew and rule out Shane. Since there was no evidence putting Shane in Alex's apartment at the time of her death, officers had to be strategic when confronting him. Curious how he would react to the news of Alex's sudden passing, the officers went directly to his apartment and knocked on his door, bringing us right back to the footage at the beginning of this video.
Hey, it's St. Paul Police. Did you hear what happened?
She okay?
Passed away.
Alex Pennig? You're kidding me. God.
Shane seemed genuinely shocked by this tragic news, but the officers needed more information from him, so they asked if they could continue their conversation down at the station.
I want to know what happened to her.
Okay, that's what I'm trying to figure out, okay? So
The detectives asked Shane to tell them about his relationship with Alex. He said that they had met back in August, they saw each other almost every day, and were even planning on moving in together.
Literally yesterday we were talking about me breaking my lease and moving into her place.
Shane essentially had nothing bad to say about the relationship, so the detectives were curious why he and Alex were arguing on the day that she died. Apparently, Alex was upset that Shane was taking too long to move in with her.
So did the argument that you guys had in that morning, did it get physical at all?
No, not at all. God, no.
Shane admitted that they would bicker here and there, but the fights would never escalate to violence because he wasn't a violent person. But the detectives had a hard time believing this. After all, Matthew told them hours earlier that Shane punched him in the face while they were at Camp Bar and Cabaret.
Alex showed up with a guy. He doesn't look familiar. I have no idea who this guy is.
He was then asked about the holes in the closet door. He admitted to punching the holes during an argument, but he denied that they happened on the night of Alex's death.
That was from a few weeks back. That was me. I was drunk. I didn't put my hands on her, though.
Even if he had broken the closet door several weeks ago, it was clear that he did, in fact, have violent outbursts within the relationship. Before making any accusations, the detectives needed to gather more evidence, so they asked if they could look through his phone, but Shane had conveniently lost it the night before. Despite all of these suspicious circumstances, Shane was free to go, and the detectives continued with their investigation. While reviewing the photos of Alex's body, they noticed something peculiar. Matthew claimed that Alex was already dead when he broke into the bathroom. If that was the case, her legs would be on the same side of the bathroom door. But strangely, Alex had one leg on each side of the door. The detectives theorized that the door had been opened before Alex was shot. To support this theory, there was Exhibit F-35, a small metal ring from the bathroom door lock that was found directly under Alex's head. It must have ended up on the floor when the door was forced open, and then Alex fell on top of it when she was shot. Little by little, the story Matthew provided was falling apart. The detectives wondered if the night out with Alex had actually unfolded the way Matthew said it had, so they obtained any surveillance footage that captured the two that night. At the Camp Bar and Cabaret, Shane can be seen sitting at the far end of the bar when Alex and Matthew enter the bar together. Alex notices that one of her friends is at the bar as well, and ditches Matthew to go say hi. But for some reason, instead of sitting back down with Matthew, Alex sits on the same side of the bar as Shane. Shane approaches Alex and begins talking to her. Matthew sees this interaction happening and comes over to introduce himself. He reaches out to shake Shane's hand, but Shane is not happy. Clearly upset about this random guy, Shane begins arguing with Alex. Matthew then steps between them and immediately gets punched in the face. Alex tries to pull Shane off of Matthew before other customers split up the fight. Shane is promptly kicked out of the bar. Not wanting this fiasco to ruin their night, Matthew and Alex decide to hang out for another 45 minutes. After having several drinks, the two stumbled out of the bar and headed back towards Alex's place. After a 12-minute walk, they enter the apartment building at 2:08 a.m. Nothing seems out of the ordinary. 19 minutes later, they can be seen exiting the building together, leaving the camera's view for a few minutes. Alex then re-enters the building alone. Her body language indicates that she is losing her patience while waiting for Matthew. She begins messaging somebody, but it's unclear who. Matthew returns at 2:33 a.m., and Alex appears visibly angry with him. She doesn't hold the door for him and storms through the lobby. Matthew follows behind, shrugging his shoulders. Clearly, there was some tension between the two as they returned to Alex's apartment, but Matthew omitted this detail when speaking with the detectives. With all of this new evidence, they asked Matthew to come in for an interview. They gave him another chance to explain what really happened.
Laughing away. Everything was fine.
You guys weren't arguing or anything? There's no fight with you two?
No, between us.
Knowing that this was a blatant lie, they started challenging Matthew's claims one by one. The first question they had was regarding the location of the gun. Matthew denied pulling the trigger, but if he didn't, then why was the gun found on her left-hand side?
She might have it. She's not so it was weird.
Since Alex's left hand was her non-dominant hand, the detectives found Matthew's story very difficult to believe. They then questioned him about the sink. He claimed that he washed the blood off of his hands before immediately calling 911, but the evidence didn't corroborate his story.
Right, and then you called the police right away?
Yeah, I called the police, yeah.
So, when you get blood all over your hands and then you go into the sink and you
Yeah.
pour the handle to the sink, right? There should be blood on that.
There should be
And
blood, yeah.
There's no
blood in the handle of the sink.
and there's nothing in the
I don't
sink.
know.
The sink
I
is
just-
the
I
sink
rinsed my hand.
the sink's dry. There's no water or anything.
No, I washed my hands in the sink. I did.
Keep in mind that the officers arrived at Alex's apartment at 2:57 a.m., just 4 minutes after Matthew said he placed the 911 call. If he really had washed his hands in the sink, he must have waited an extended period of time for the sink to dry up before calling the police. Or Matthew didn't try to keep Alex alive at all and never got blood on his hands in the first place.
Right now, all this evidence does not add up.
I can't.
I just want you to just think. I just want you to think about this and what you're...
You're asking me to confess to something I didn't do.
No, I'm not. I'm asking you just to think.
I mean,
Matthew was clearly overwhelmed by the evidence against him, so the detectives decided to leave him to his own devices to let things sink in.
We're just going to give you some time here just to think. We got to grab that stuff anyway. Think about everything that we discussed with you.
Matthew was given plenty of time to contemplate his next move, and by the time the detectives came back to the room, there was something he needed to get off his chest.
so the change that I have, I did take the gun and I put it in my suitcase.
Matthew said he initially tried hiding the gun because he didn't want to be blamed for something he didn't do, especially because it was his gun. But realizing that this would only make him look worse, he put the gun back where he found it.
I put it in the suitcase, went back, looked to her, and said, "Yep." Went back to the suitcase, grabbed the gun, and put it back there.
Although he admitted to tampering with evidence, Matthew was adamant that he had no part in Alex's death.
I did not cheat. I didn't.
The detectives continued to apply pressure, but Matthew stuck to his story. With no progress being made, the detectives wrapped up the interview. Matthew was escorted to a cell while his charges were being processed.
44-year-old Matthew Ecker was charged with second-degree murder in connection with the death of Alexandra Pennig of St. Paul. He faces up to 40 years in prison if convicted.
On February 8, 2024, Matthew's trial began. The prosecution painted Matthew as a cheating husband, desperate to win over Alex because he never got over the fling they had years earlier. Not only did he spend thousands of dollars to keep her afloat during her financial struggles, he also abused his nurse practitioner privileges to refill any medications she wanted. In fact, all of the medications found in Alex's apartment were prescribed by Matthew. Matthew became frustrated when these attempts to reignite their romance failed. And on December 16th, after a volatile night, an argument broke out at Alex's apartment. The prosecution theorized that Alex threatened to tell Matthew's wife about the affair, so he shot her in the head to keep her quiet. They expanded on this claim by highlighting the plethora of physical evidence against Matthew. They focused on Alex's body position when she was discovered, saying that the only way her legs could have wound up straddling the bathroom door is if it was forced open before she fell to the ground. The same concept goes for the metal ring found under her head. The door lock must have been busted open before she fell to the ground. They also accused Matthew of washing his hands in the bathroom sink to get rid of any blood or gunshot residue on them. Since the sink wasn't wet, they suggested that Matthew didn't call 911 immediately. Instead, he cleaned the gun to get rid of his fingerprints and DNA and staged it back in the bathroom. Matthew's defense attorney, YouTube star Bruce Rivers, claimed that the prosecution's case was based on pure speculation and told the jury to focus on the facts. According to the autopsy, Alex's blood alcohol level was about 3 times above the legal limit, and she had 4 different medications in her system, clearly indicating that she had a significantly altered state of mind at the time of her death. The defense said that Matthew refilled these medications because he believed that it was best for her, and while it may have been unethical, it wasn't illegal. As for her body position, they argued that Alex could have easily ended up that way from Matthew moving her while trying to help her. They also pointed out that there was 0 blood spatter from the gunshot found on Matthew. But the prosecution had an explanation for this. After Matthew busted open the bathroom door, Alex likely tried to hold it shut to protect herself. But Matthew stuck his hand through the half-open door and shot her in the head. In this scenario, the door would have shielded any blood from landing on him, except for the hand that he conveniently washed. Perhaps the strongest piece of evidence for the defense was that despite Alex's cause of death clearly being a gunshot wound to the head, her manner of death could not be determined. The defense even hired their own forensic pathologist who came to the same conclusion. If 2 qualified experts couldn't deem this as a homicide, why should the prosecution be able to do so? Both sides rested their case and the jury began deliberations. After 9 hours, they had reached their verdict. Matthew Ecker was found guilty for the second-degree murder of Alex Pennig. 2 months later, on April 3, 2024, Matthew's sentencing hearing took place. Alex's family filled the gallery, eager to share their impact statements with the court. Her friends Jillian and Sarah went up to the podium together for support.
Countless times I picked up the phone to call Al, only to realize I won't ever hear her voice again.
Alex really was a once-in-a-lifetime kind of friend.
During Sarah's impact statement, Jillian looked over at Matthew to gauge his reaction, hoping to see an ounce of remorse. But Matthew's expression remained blank as he listened to the pain and suffering he had caused Alex's loved ones. Mary Jo and Jim Pennig, Alex's parents, told the judge why they believe Matthew should receive the maximum possible sentence.
Our hearts have been broken beyond repair, and the future trajectory of our lives has been changed forever. And the world lost a special soul, and we lost our baby.
Matthew's family was also given the opportunity to say their piece. His mom said that Matthew had a good heart and begged the judge to give him a lesser sentence.
Matt is one of the kindest and most compassionate people we know. He has spent most of his adult life helping people and caring for people. I truly believe that Matt has so much more to offer to this world.
After considering the arguments from both sides, along with the impact statements, the judge handed down Matthew's sentence.
It is the sentence of the law and the judgment of the court that you serve 360 months with the Department of Corrections.
Matthew Ecker was sentenced to 30 years in prison without the possibility of parole.
You are remanded to the custody of the Department of Corrections.
Following his sentencing, Matthew tried to appeal his conviction, but on April 21st, 2025, his appeal was denied. He and his wife separated directly following the shooting, and their 4 children are in her custody. His family has had no contact with the kids since his conviction. And as for Alex's family and friends, they frequently get together to tell stories about her and keep her memory alive.